Star family. I'm back. It's good to be back. Peace and blessings to everybody. Happy New Year. It's been 4 months. I took a break. Was moving house. Many amazing delays, but now it's nice to be back on track with the planets because my life has felt like a blur. A blur. Anyway, fam, I'm so glad to be back. This lunar cycle forecast, this video is going to look at the lunation beginning 21st of January 2023. And it's going to go through the 20th of February. And it's a very interesting lunation from a sidereal point of view, as Saturn is wrapping up Capricorn, moving into Aquarius. It's really big, and we'll look at that within the context of the lunar cycle. So we're going to be discussing constellational astrology, aka true sidereal astrology. So if you've heard that this new moon is in Aquarius, that's tropical astrology, and or mainstream Western astrology. And if we look in the actual skies, the new moon comes together at the end of Sagittarius, beginning of Capricorn. And so I'd say sidereal astrology, which we're going to be using throughout the course of this video, is for people who are interested in looking at the actual skies and seeing how are the alignments in real time. So when we look up into the heavens for this January 21st new moon, this is really what is very representative of what we would see. And technically we're about a degree into Capricorn, which makes it nice to see the ruler, Saturn, here with Venus in late Capricorn. And Saturn and Venus actually get along very well. But for now, I just want to sort of outline the skies here. We have Mercury bringing up the rear, and Neptune, Jupiter, Chiron, and Eris occupying Pisces. We actually don't have anything going on in Aquarius at this time, at the time of the new moon. But we do have Uranus with the North Node in constellation Aries and Mars in constellation Taurus, right in the area of the Hyades on fixed star Aldebaran. Very, very interesting. Mars is going to be a key player this month. So the new moon is representative of a cycle that's very restful. It's a very quiet phase, having to do with a little bit of reset energetically. So we can align with that on a monthly pulse, and we can do that just by being aware that the new moon is a low energy time. And being a low energy time, it's actually a great time to look back, to look ahead, and to kind of bring all that into the now. See how we're relating to events, the context of our lives, by looking inward, looking within. So we have 3 directions that are really favored to be looking at in the new moon. That's back, forward, and within. 2 of those having to do with time and 1 having to do with space. So let's look at this chart, friends. Here, and when we look at any new moon chart, my first considerations are, where is the new moon? So we have the new moon here, as mentioned, on the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp. And then I want to see, what is the new moon doing? And we'll see that over here in these 2 columns, where we'll see what kind of relationships is moon and sun together making. What sort of aspects? Is this supported or confounded by any forces that we can identify? So we're just into Capricorn on the Sag Cap cusp, And a cusp is a really powerful thing. And this cusp is a cusp of greater power, because these energies of Sagittarius and Capricorn are correlate with, or in the old language, ruled by Jupiter and Saturn, respectively. Jupiter ruling Sag and Saturn ruling Cap. So together these two govern real world power and leadership in a really special way, unique to other planets and very, very poignant. And when they come together, they also symbolize spiritual commitment. And this, when we combine Jupiter and Saturn, we often see intense spiritual commitment. So we have real world power and leadership, and we have spiritual commitment. So power, any way you cut it, right? What is spiritual commitment? A commitment to grow our personal power in whether you take this as a left hand or a right hand thing. I'm going to digress a little bit, but what is spiritual commitment? But it's a commitment to grow Jupiter, to expand Jupiter, our sense of power, our sense of personal power, our sense of authority in our own sphere, in order to benefit others, in order to liberate from the bonds of suffering. But nonetheless, it takes personal power to do this. Saturn's a working energy. Jupiter's an expansive force that grows anything it touches. And on this cusp of Cap Sag, what we have is a blended essence of power. Because Jupiter and Sagittarius, they actually correlate here with all things expansive. So we have promotion, growth, increase, spread. And then Saturn and Capricorn correlate with all things contractive. So we have doubts and fears, but we also have mastery and discipline, those things that are resultant of us going deep within and encountering what we encounter in the depths of our inner world, facing that and mastering it. Those are Saturn processes. So the cusp of these two, this is a really special cusp, my friends. Cusp is a point between star groups where the energies of both come into play in a blended way. So we have both expansion and contraction. This cusp, the Sag-Cap cusp, is known for quiet competence. It's known for perseverance. These are energies that are going to be, well, I would say on display this month, except you don't really display perseverance or quiet confidence. But if you look closely, you just might see these expressions of humanity that have to do with just keeping a focused and determined approach to ongoing projects. And that's gonna come a little more naturally this month. So I say this is a cusp of greater power because it's an area of the heavens that holds the blended expression of these two energies together. And it has a very special effect on worldly power and spiritual power. So we can add to the power already present in this. We have the sun and the moon, the two luminaries symbolizing consciousness, correlate with awareness, consciousness, in this powerful axis. And we can add to that Pluto's presence here at the very end of Sagittarius. Pluto's another heavenly archetype having a lot to do with power. Pluto's very interested in power. Pluto's correlate to the power of the unconscious. So right away we know that we don't know what we're dealing with, but we know it's very, very powerful. And I'm being very, it sounds funny when I say it that way, but I'm being totally serious. Pluto's a wild card and it acts in unpredictable ways. We know it's going to be extreme. We know it's going to be polarized. We know it's going to bring things to a point of transformation, to a point where something has to give, and it does. We know Pluto does that. Pluto is correlate to the sphere of being within human experience that we call soul. And Sag is a global and greatly inclusive influence. So Sag, when we have Sag, we have, like I was saying about the energies of expanse. We have spread. We have growth, and Sagittarius touches things that makes the effect very global or greatly inclusive. So Pluto is the resources of power that we bring from our soul level, deep within or below our conscious minds, deep below that. And Sag is representing truth and the quest for correct understanding, the quest for correct cognition. Especially with Mercury here, we do have an emphasis on correct cognition. Pluto is deep and dark and strange and very manipulative, friends. So I look to Jupiter, the dispositor here, to see how is Jupiter affected. How will Jupiter maybe manifest influence over Pluto? And he's in Pisces, where he does very well, given ancient rulership before Neptune's discovery. And Jupiter is very resonant, does exceedingly well in these stars. From everything I've seen, it's very textbook that Jupiter is exalted here. Jupiter is with Chiron, emphasizing the potential to heal. And so we have all this, just like we have Saturn in Capricorn with Venus that I mentioned, that's going to soften and make gentle some of the harsher Saturn aspects. We have Jupiter in Pisces, a set of stars which softens and makes gentle. So we may see Pluto express this sort of like intense, charged, powerful influence, but we may also see that touched by the grace of the benefics in their influence this month. And Jupiter also, I noticed it square to Mercury. And so with all the intensity and power issues, you really could be subject to overthinking this month. And so I just want to throw that out there. I just want to caution people, this is an energy that's going to affect the whole month. It's going to be especially strong around new moon. Jupiter squares tend to overdo things, and Mercury is already very close to fixed star Nunki, which is it's a very tightly wound energy. It's capable of a lot. So there could be a sense that we're going to figure out the truth of things, or some truth that we've maybe been wondering about, maybe been trying to crack, maybe we've been in a big research. Maybe this is actually a month with Pluto and Mercury here in Sag. And all this to crack the nut of truth and to discover truths and to really align with what's really going on. We're going to take a bigger look at that, within the context of how the full moon and everything fits into that. But before we get ahead of ourselves, what we need to be aware of with Mercury square to Jupiter is that if we find ourselves subject to just churning thoughts and they won't stop, and really get obsessive, right? Because this is Pluto's effect on consciousness. Sun, moon with Pluto. Obsessive, fixative, compulsive influence. We need to be able to understand we can pull back from that. We can take a few deep breaths. We can orient ourselves to something calming or healing, knitting, nature, it doesn't matter. Because we're not really done with this assessment. The new moon here with Pluto is also nicely trine to Mars, and Mars is on fixed star Aldebaran, and that's a position that Mars is going to be in, trine to the Sun and relative to fixed star Aldebaran through the full moon. So Mars will sort of move with the Sun as the Sun moves around. And by the time the moon makes its way to early Leo here, for the fullness of it, this will still be in effect. So what does that mean? We have a Mars trine to Pluto, Sun, Moon. That's going to play a major role in this. This is really interesting, and I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it accessible. This is really very interesting. It's interesting because Taurus and in general, and Aldebaran, Alpha Tauri, stabilize. They have the effect of stabilizing. And Pluto, by its very nature, destabilizes. So we have the forces of destabilization and the forces of stabilization in play. And then to further complicate it, Pluto is representing our unconscious desires, right? Pluto's representing those things that emerge from the depths of our psyche that we almost can't claim to understand. They emerge from deep within. They're hidden. While Mars is representing the conscious desires, the desires we know we have. We know. So we may want stability, but we may be compelled by deeper forces this month that have different interests. And there may be a matter of both coming into play, because the trine is usually forces working together. And this could take a lot of faces, friends. This could just take too many faces to really go over, try to list, like it could be like this or it could be like that. But what we could see is that things might start to come apart. That's a Pluto effect. But the Mars, and this could come of effort and endeavor on the collective part, or the part of individuals who are affected by these alignments in their personal ways. But we could see effort to hold things together as Pluto tries to sort of take them apart. And we could see them both playing a role. We could see Pluto taking things apart and then us needing to put something back together. And it could be put back together in a good way relative to Aldebaran, and in a new way because Uranus and North Node are highly active in Aries, correlate with Mars. So these are the sort of evolutionary urges towards something new, a new way of doing things, an urge to separate from the old way, and to do things in a new way is going to become increasingly pronounced this month, especially as Saturn is moving into Aquarius out of Capricorn. That's going to make a big difference in how all this, even Mars on Aldebaran, because of the action in Aries and the sympathetic resonance, it's going to make a. I think of it as a sort of overtone of this month. We're shifting into really pushing things to a point of needing to discover new ways of doing things. And the good news is that there's a lot of support for that. There's a lot of grace involved. And even with this Sun, Moon, Pluto trine to Mars, we see Jupiter on the midpoint exerting sextile influence on each actor here, Mars and Sun, Moon, Pluto. So with these Jupiter sextiles, this could be a really stabilizing influence. It could bring that disharmony or dichotomy into greater order and greater just process, that it be blessed and less chaotic. And that could be in individuals' lives or in anywhere in the collective. This chart could indicate a need to evaluate how aligned do you feel on a personal level with the desires of your own unconscious self. And then we also have in the mix this idea that the collective unconscious, very symbolized by Pluto in late Sag, the collective consciousness. Do we feel aligned with those intentions and those motions? Do we feel that our personal life is aligned with the drama that humanity is undergoing right now, the lessons that we're learning, and the phase of evolution that the collective is in? How do we relate to that? And aligned doesn't mean going along with. Aligned just means you know where you sit relative to that. There's not a lot of questions or dangling loose ends about that. Great time to confront issues around our own humanity, issues around our own part of such a deranged and debauched collective. That could be a really interesting exploration this month. So, just to synthesize all of that, it's a Cap Sag thing. So, we got this Capricorn Sagittarius blend with both dispositors, Saturn sitting here in his stars with Venus, and Jupiter sitting here in stars very friendly to him with Chiron and Neptune. The way the wind is blowing looks good for these combinations of Jupiterian and Saturnian energy. Things like sustained effort, reserved optimism, making work fun, having fun at work. That's a Jupiter Saturn. That's a Cap Sag thing. Quiet competence, perseverance. And another thing that goes along with this is building a body of knowledge or skills. Highly favored at this time, just so any study or craft practice is just great to increase. It's a Cap Sag thing. But overall, the new moon energies that'll mark this lunar cycle are powerful, as it's a cusp and it's with Pluto. They're intense. That's a Pluto factor too. They're penetrative. That's Pluto and Mars. They're very penetrative. And that means they'll get into things to understand the real principles in action, how things work under the surface. But both Mars and Pluto do that. Very interested in what's going on in there. Not surface level. So this is favored depth of discovery. They're well dispositioned. Jupiter and Saturn are very well dispositioned for power, the development of power, or the expression of power, any kind, whether it be spiritual power, sort of inner hidden, the kind of power that we know inwardly and is very private just to us, or temporal power, worldly power, all the same. This doesn't, Jupiter doesn't discriminate. Jupiter just, it's a power thing. So, while there may be dichotomy between Mars in Taurus's urge to security and the sort of collective transformation process symbolized by late Sag Pluto with the Sun and Moon, these Jupiter sextiles from Pisces are likely going to soften any really, dramatic things, and will be likely to support them, making them nice or at least bearable. Very likely. They can also help us see both sides of any issue around our role vis-a-vis the role of evolution in the collective that is humanity. So our role versus the collective. It can help us see those as one thing. Jupiter in Pisces kind of touching Sun and Moon here and highlighting this sort of marked kind of similarity difference here between Mars and Pluto. It can help us see the whole thing as one thing, just one thing. It all moves together. There's only one thing, folks. There's a reality, and no matter how many reality streams there are, and there could be infinite streams of infinite realities, there's just one thing happening. And that's what Pisces reminds us of, and that's where Jupiter can help us find our place in all this. Because it's crazy out there, my friends. And with that, I'd like to move to the waxing quarter moon. All right, fam. This is the waxing quarter moon, January 28th. And what we have is a moon that's moved around to conjoin Uranus and the North Node in Aries, very active area of the sky. It's trine to Mercury. So this combination, Moon, Uranus, Mercury, is always really beautiful for not just expressing a high quality of ideas, but expressing a high quality of ideas very well. Like there's not just a very inspired genius quality to this, but there's kind of almost a wordsmith or I mean, it's even like artistry or poetry almost, the way some of these genius ideas get expressed. It's great for art with Mercury and Sag, great for truth. And yeah, just to look at the intention of the cycle before we jump into the alignments. A first quarter or waxing quarter moon is really about growth. It's about emergence and development. We're moving towards the full expression, the full dynamism. The square between sun and moon makes it a really interesting time because squares are the most powerful, the most dynamically charged of all of the aspects. So, oftentimes what we see at this point in the cycle, the waxing quarter moon, is a point of externally focused dynamism. So what we have is external focus. So we have work, action, building. These are the things that are really favored at this time. So the moon hits this point of dynamic tension, square to sun, just as it's transiting fixed star Hamal, the head of the ram, one of my favorites, and is nestling up to the north node. The emphasis here is actually on Martian things, and we noted Mars on Aldebaran. But the emphasis on Mars really highlights North Node and Uranus, and as Saturn moves out of constellation Capricorn and into Aquarius, I think we'll see power flow more so to this combo, where there will be a drive to produce collective understandings, a drive to produce new ways of organizing society. It could be a time of a lot of emergence in that way. And at the same time, fam, this could potentially be really confused because right on the sun-moon midpoint sits Neptune, and he's making really close semi-squares to both sun and moon. And when that happens, you can't understand what's going on. You can't really see it clearly. So, at the same time as Neptune is clouding things up with semi-squares to sun and moon, just sort of affecting consciousness with you can't really tell what's going on kind of effect. The sun is in a little bit disadvantaged position relative to the nodal axis. So sun sits in sort of a confused point already, okay? So while there may be a lot of genius that comes out of this, it's likely to come from gazing into the abyss of some confusion. And this is another sort of a dichotomous influence. This lunar cycle is marked by them, like the Mars-Pluto one. We have this Mercury-Uranus moon north node, an appetite for solutions, an appetite for genius. But we have Neptune in the way, so we're going to have to watch delusional thinking. We're going to have to watch how we reshape ourselves as we retell our own narrative to ourselves. Does that make sense? Yeah. How most of us reshape in the telling of our own story to ourselves. We reshape ourselves. We make ourselves the hero of our own narrative, or we make ourselves the victim of our own narrative. We do a lot of things, and in the end, we usually exaggerate. And Neptune semi-squares will create this sort of exaggeration to an Aries Capricorn situation. They'll make it hard to understand where we are. Moon and Aries, that's the individuation urge to separate, to get who am I figured out. And then Sun in Capricorn is very much making it relative to society. But we can move on. We have to be on guard for confused actions in others and especially in ourselves at this time. There could be motivation and drive to do things that don't seem to have a rational basis. You may experience this or you may see it in others. So we can lean into the familiar, actually, with Sun in Capricorn and Saturn with Venus. We can lean into our routines if any of this aforementioned conflicts is starting to cause problems for us. You know, integrating into society, dealing with these new ideas, any of it, the anxiety around a strange new world and where we're going as a species, where we're going as a planet. Just sticking to the familiar can be empowering at this time if things get a little spicy. I don't want to dwell too much on the first quarter moon. I want to take a nice look at the full moon here. And this is February 5th, 2023. For most of the world, February 5th is full moon, and it's going to be taking place in early Leo on the Leo-Cancer cusp. So both new moon and full moon are cusps this year, this cycle, and I think that's interesting. But let's get to the expression of the full moon. What does it mean? I think the intention of the full moon can be summarized in one word, which is expression. It's often an expression that's related to the new moon. What wants to happen can be seen in terms of the new moon, and how it might happen can be seen in terms of the full moon. We have another dynamic tension. It's the opposition, and it's actually not ever been considered as powerful as the square. Not as much tension there, not as much power to tap into. But the moon and the sun are opposite in the sky, and this polarizes things, and that raises energy. The full moon takes place in Leo on the Capricorn Leo axis. So we have a sun in Capricorn. Now Leo makes a natural opposition to Aquarius. And the Leo Capricorn axis is going to further exaggerate that dynamic tension between the individual, very Leo, how are we doing our thing, and then society, the Capricornian influence of the collective. The dynamic tension is going to be between the themes of self-expression of all kinds, and that's a Leo theme, and that's artistic, personal, theatrical, and in the opposition kind of exaggerates those kind of boring conformist expressions of Capricorn, right? Those more like just really Leo's very expressive. It's very artistic. It wants to be individual. It wants to discover who am I and why am I different? How am I unique? And Capricorn is very much organized around the greater good. The idea that one person's problems are everyone's problems, that we're in this together collectively. That's Capricorn. That we're interconnected and interdependent. This is a very Capricornian idea. So who we are individually. This is the axis, the Cap Leo axis. Very interesting axis. Who we are individually. Versus who we are collectively, who we are individually within the collective, right? Because Capricorn is very oriented to work. And this also is given tension. This is given tension and power by a T-square to Uranus. Now, we talked about Uranus just in the waxing quarter moon, but Uranus North Node, a T-square to the full moon really closely. So this can bring about things like needing to restructure our position, relative to society. This could be work, it could be political orientation, it could be social involvement, but needing to renovate or restructure. And it could increase anxieties relative to the relationship between individuals and their society. It could initiate new forms of individual expression within society, like art forms or forms of media. It could be viral or mainstream, and that anything that spoke to society as a whole. But with Sun and Moon disadvantaged relative to the nodes, because now here we have the nodal axis, and both Sun and Moon are in a little bit of a confused or a little bit crisis position relative to the nodes. We're often at a personal level, we don't have a sense of what to do. That's what happens when Sun and Moon are here. It can be very hard to discover what it is that we want to do. We often can't tell. We can be confused. We can't decide. We can waffle or vacillate. And even if we know what we want to do, it can be very hard to conceptualize it and express it. So all of that could attend this full moon. And our sun and our moon are in harsh aspect and are creating further aspect to Uranus. That's harsh. Mercury is with Pluto, and the conjunction, believe me, is a neutral aspect. It's not an easy aspect. It's maybe not harsh, but we have Mercury with Pluto, and it's square to Eris, and we have Venus and Mars, and they're square each other. And what we have is all of the inner planets facing some kind of more significant harsh aspect. So this new moon could really be challenging. It could be challenging in inner ways. We could feel thwarted, and this could be subject to just obstacles and problems that aren't really even anyone's fault per se. And as always, if we think that our problems are someone else's fault, we really need to watch our projections. That's an Eris Mercury lesson, and that's always true. That's always true as Sun opposed Moon, because we do see things reflected in others. We see ourselves reflected in the other. But without wanting to get into all of that, I just want to caution that this could be a time of some confusion because Saturn is ingressing Aquarius, and all the personal planets are just under a little more duress than usual, a little more harsh aspect than usual. So this symbolizes infusing new energy into our usual boring social systems and looking at those systems, thinking about those systems differently, from a different angle, under a different illumination that kind of gives rise to new ideas about them. That's the benefit of all this. That's the medicine of this cycle. And this moon can be a time to try new things. That's even trying on like a new view. I mean, that's the Leo magic. The new things are an Aquarius artifact, but trying on a new us, relative to all of these ideas, the great sort of dichotomy here, the individual and collective split of this cycle that's really pronounced. We can try on new persona, new personality, new, even though it might feel awkward, it actually very likely might feel awkward. This moon really favors a little experimentation and trying different things on for size. So the Cancer-Leo cusp is an area of the sky that's marked by honoring ourselves. It asks us to take care of ourselves and nurture ourselves. And so it's a great time, this whole cycle, and especially as we move towards this new moon, it's a great time to try new things on as personality traits. This could be anything. I don't want to limit it. for anyone. I don't even want to suggest anything. I just want to encourage you to get uncomfortable, kind of try something new on for size and see how it works. See what's in you that's been wanting to emerge and express that you haven't been giving voice to. Because it's awkward, because it's vulnerable, because it's honest, genuine, but people maybe don't want to see that. That's the Cancer Leo cusp too, honoring ourselves by being true to ourselves. So we can try this on. This is favored this time to try new things relative to the old ideas, the old social ways, the old, the boring ways that have gotten us here. They've gotten us here in history. We need new ways of thinking. The ways of thinking that got us here, they're not going to fix the problems that we're facing. Those ways of thinking caused the problems, you could say. But the new ways of thinking, we need to discover new ways of thinking and being that address the great pain of humanity, our lack of alignment at this time in history, to bring into alignment with our deep self. This is something that Pluto is going to help us with this cycle. Bring alignment between our conscious mind and our deep self. That's integrity, that's authenticity. This cycle is about that, but it's asking us, I think, maybe push a little bit, discover maybe some things that might feel awkward. I bring this up not just because of Uranus squares. Uranus squares are anxious and awkward, but because of an Eris trine and a Chiron trine. And we do have Moon opposed to Saturn. So everything that I see in that makes me think that we could be anything from pushed beyond our limits to just kind of needing to kind of tiptoe out onto the high dive. And, we've never done that before. It can be very scary. Very scary. So hold space for yourself, acknowledging any sort of risks like that you may choose to take this month in alignment with these stars and planets. Be good to yourself. Be gentle. Right at this full moon, the energies of the stars and planets kind of look like they're conspiring to support new expressions of all kinds. New expressions of art, drama, of personhood, of expression, again, of personality, the persona. The beginnings of new movements within society correlate to Saturn and Aquarius. And the beginnings of new personal overtures and modes of expression, new ways of being, new habits, new patterns of being, new patterns within the psyche. It's not just a superficial personality thing like the mask we wear. No. You could be awkward and confused, but I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. And any of those vulnerabilities that emerge can be threads that we pull towards our own healing. That's the trine to Chiron. We can follow those insecurities and vulnerabilities deeper until we are actually able to patch up or address some of the original causes for this disturbance, distress, and misalignment. So don't be afraid to experiment this month, my friends. Definitely supported to do something new, do something outside your comfort zone. And the waning quarter moon, the last quarter moon, February 13th. Just like the waxing quarter, the first quarter moon is a dynamic, energy-oriented outward towards work, accomplishment, building, growth. The waning quarter moon is likewise a square between sun and moon, but it's inward facing. It's an introspective energy, and the waning quarter symbolizes a time where we're beginning to shed those skins that represent what we don't want to keep, and we're beginning to move towards the next cycle, the next sort of low point. So we're looking back, starting to look back, and again looking forward. This very much mirrors, in a sense, not as intense, but it mirrors the process of looking back, looking forward, and looking inward. This sort of starts in earnest at the waning quarter moon. For me, I notice these dates and I think, wow, where have I been? I sort of slow down, take stock. Usually things have been going, and this is a good time to kind of apply the brakes. And on this moon, on this date, the February 13th, our senses are really likely to be heightened. I mean, we have this trine to Neptune, making contact with Venus here. And it can be a time when self-appreciation might be available, even in the middle of a sensitivity or vulnerability. Yeah, we when Moon, Venus, Neptune get together, we can really appreciate ourselves, even for our sensitivities. Its vulnerability is strength. If you think that strength is keeping everything really stiff and never being vulnerable and always, that is not strong. That is not strong. That's brittle, and it snaps. And vulnerability, actually, surprisingly, one of the keys to resilience, strength, true strength. But if you're feeling very raw and exposed, Moon Venus trines help people relate to each other. So this may be a good time at the Moon in Libra to connect with someone, maybe connect with someone you haven't connected with in a while. Maybe connect with someone you connect with all the time. But it's a great social time to compare your experience and to appreciate other people's experience relative to everything that's going on. So this could be a great time not to be an island, not to be a loner, not to be a hermit, not to be a stranger, but instead to kind of share your experience with someone. That about wraps it up, friends. As we move towards the next new moon, on February 20th. Now we're in the time machine, looking forward. We're back in the future. We're in the future, and we'll check this out next month as February 20th approaches. But it looks like another Sun Moon conjunction. This time with Saturn in Aquarius. So we have an Aquarius new moon with Saturn. Very, very exciting. I don't want to say too much about it. There are remarkably supportive aspects. Remarkably supportive aspects. You can see down here in the aspects table. Basically, this program marks harsh aspects with a red, like these semi-squares, this square, we have a square, and everything else you'll notice is blue, and it marks supportive, harmonious, beneficial aspects in blue. Aspects that tend to be very supportive and nurturing, not indicative of a lot of problems. So it seems like we have a lot of support for the processes of this month, for all that they involved Uranus, for all that we were focused on Saturn. Next month, the new moon will be in Aquarius with Saturn here. It'll be very exciting, and we'll look at that then. Oh, thank you, Star Family. Thanks for bearing with me. I feel a little bit, got to get my sea legs getting back into this. But one thing I do want to do is encourage everybody. I encourage you to generate your natal chart and compare and compare your natal chart to these transits, if that's possible. And many sidereal astrology people are very pleased with like Fagin Bradley, Ayanamsha, or another even sign zodiac where all the signs are the same 30 degrees. But if you want to see how your natal chart looks in the style that I'm using, um, then that's the uneven signs marked by the constellational boundaries. You can calculate a chart for yourself at masteringthezodiac.com. Under charts, click chart calculator, and you can do it at siderealastrologist.com at the bottom of that page. Free sidereal chart. And if you want to generate a chart that's with more information, much more information, similar to what you saw in the videos, but actually with even more, you can contact me via email. There's information on my site and example charts. It's a $5 suggested donation, and it includes all the data that you'll need to launch a basic exploration of your own chart in the true sidereal or constellational system. So yeah, do visit my site. Check that out. It's Hey gang, I practice evolutionary astrology using the true sidereal skies, the astronomically accurate natal chart. So evolutionary astrology is it's a psychological spiritual framework based on personal growth. We approach personal growth and work towards freeing karmic bonds, and I do this by applying the logic of evolutionary astrology to the astronomically accurate natal chart. So that's a little different than a lot of the practice that's out there. And if it interests you, I encourage you to contact me. I love to do personal readings, and you can find out more about that on my website as well. If you want to be part of the conversation or just lurk and listen, people who dig this kind of astrology get together in a Facebook group called Sidereal Revolution, and it's a great community full of people I appreciate. And if you want to discover more about this kind of astrology, that's your hub. For now, thanks. Thanks for staying aligned. Stay blessed out there, fam. I wish you all a very, very beautiful month. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.